to just respect everybody's time, I'll go ahead and kick this off. Recovery People's really excited to do this launch meeting around Prosper. Prosper stands for Peer and Recovery Organization Sustainability, Planning, Equity, and Research. For a little housekeeping today, this meeting is being recorded. We want to be able to share it with all those who registered and also post it on the project website. So if you'd like to keep yourself off camera or do what you need to feel more comfortable, since this is being recorded, we totally respect that. We also ask you to keep yourself muted if you're not talking, but that's not to say we don't want you to engage. We really want this to be, you know, a conversation and a dialogue. If you have questions, please put those in the chat. You can raise your hand and I can call on you if that makes you feel comfortable, or feel free to unmute yourself and just, you know, ask the question. The important thing is that we provide you with the information that you're really interested in about this particular project. So first of all, you know, who is Recovery People? I do recognize a lot of familiar faces, but there are some of y'all that are new. So I wanted to take some time and talk about Recovery People. I don't even think I introduced myself. I'm Jason Howell. I am the Executive Director of Recovery People. Recovery People is a statewide recovery community organization. What that means is that we are a 501c3 nonprofit based here in Texas, and that we are majority led and governed by individuals and affected family members in recovery from substance use and related mental health challenges. We envision a world that has an ecosystem of recovery in every community that is accessible to everyone, and that really drives a lot of our programming. As a nonprofit, we are a mission-driven organization. Recovery People engages, educates, and empowers change makers to use their lived experience to make a difference for others who've been impacted by the substance use or mental health challenges. And these change makers tend to manifest in a couple different archetypes. We have those that are at heart entrepreneurs, and these are individuals that want to start or manage, administer organizations. And so one of our line of services around organizational development, and Prosper, this particular project really interfaces a lot with entrepreneurs. We have some individuals, some change makers that really want to do direct services. And so we have another line of service that we call peer-to-career. Actually, Christine Zimmerly is our coordinator, is on the line. And really getting people supported as they move along that journey towards a career in this industry. And then we have individuals who are advocates, the policy wonks of the world, who really want to make a change from a policy perspective. And we also have Elizabeth. I don't know, Elizabeth, if you want to give a wave there, that support individuals along their advocacy journey as well. We don't do this alone. Recovery People develop social impact networks. It is, we partner with the recovery community and ally organizations to create these networks, all to try to solve very complex problems. And their mental health and substance use and all around it are very complex problems. And the network really is measured. The potential of it is measured in the quantity and quality of the individuals and organizations that are part of the network. We attract people to that network through common goals. And sometimes we think about it as a network of networks because it's important to bring different perspectives together. And I really want to highlight this because you'll see how Prosper really is a social impact network, or that's what we're wanting to do, is bring different perspectives together in order to make social change. So what is Prosper? What is this project? So again, it stands for Peer and Recovery Organization Sustainability, Planning, Equity, and Research. It is a project within Recovery People that is funded through federal discretionary dollars. More specifically, at the federal level, you have Health and Human Services. Within Health and Human Services, there's SAMHSA. We love our acronyms in this world. So SAMHSA stands for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. Within SAMHSA, there's different departments. One of those departments is the Center for Substance Abuse Treatment. You'll sometimes hear people refer to it as CSAT. And then CSAT has different funding opportunities. One of those funding opportunities is called the Recovery Community Service Programs, RCSPs. And of the RCSPs, they allocated three of those grants for statewide networks. Recovery People was one of only 3 in the entire nation to win one of these statewide network grants. So if we look at, remember we were talking about the social impact network and bringing people together for a common purpose. And the purpose of Prosper is to strengthen the capacity of peer and recovery organizations to drive state, local, and organizational policy, to access more diverse sets of revenue streams, and to advance the integration and provision of recovery support services across coordinated state and local recovery-oriented systems of care. So that's a really big purpose. And so kind of looking at how are we going to accomplish that? We're going to do that in a couple different ways. The first is by expanding our social impact network that we've been talking about. And remember, I said the strength of a network is bringing the different perspectives to the table. And I think this is what's going to be really unique about this project is we want to bring peer and recovery organizations to the discussion table. We also want to bring payers, the organizations that pay for peer and recovery services. We want them at the discussion table as well as stakeholder organizations. And bringing all 3 of those together will balance out our Prosper network. In addition to that, we want to achieve our purpose by developing Prosper sustainability models, and then eventually a state strategic plan. So many peer and recovery organizations, the ones that have been around for over a decade, still struggle around sustainability, much less all those who want to open up, those entrepreneurs that want to open up new peer and recovery organizations. And so we really need to be thinking about how not only do we get some funding, but sustainable funding for these organizations to start and grow, and and be part of a coordinated statewide plan. Some other interesting elements to this particular project is a multilateral approach. So I've already talked about that. We're bringing the different groups together, the providers, the payers, and the stakeholders. And so we want to do some research. I don't know if y'all have heard of SWOT analysis. It's looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats with each one of these groups, or from the perspective of each one of these groups, and really evaluate, policy, knowledge, and capacity in each one of these groups. Because it's going to take all 3 groups to really reach that purpose that we're looking at. And so it's not only identifying the opportunities, the barriers, it's also looking at how do we develop solutions. And it's just not solutions or resources for PROs. We also want to look at developing resources for the other partners as well, so the payers and the stakeholders. So our hope is at the end of this, we'll be able to identify the barriers and gaps, and then solutions, and from those solutions, identify training and technical assistance that is for each one of the 3 audiences. So let's see, what is a stakeholder? Thank you for that question. So a stakeholder is an individual or an organization that has a vested interest in getting individuals or family members impacted by substance use or mental health connected with peer and recovery services. And so they may not be, or they're not a deliverer of those services, and they're not a payer of those services, but they are a stakeholder. That might look like an advocacy organization, a legislative office, researchers, vendors. There's a lot of other individuals and ally organizations that we want at this discussion table. So, Catherine, hopefully that answers your question. I really appreciate you asking it. So, through this proposal, we've got a lot of goals, and we're going to have a lot of moving parts. And so I want to go through those. So let's see, the question is, so someone who runs sober living, which group would I fall under? So from my perspective, sober living is a peer and recovery organization, because you're providing a peer recovery service to individuals looking for sober housing. Goal 1, we've already been alluding to this, is weave a cross-sector social impact network of peer recovery organizations, payers, and stakeholders committed to peer and recovery organizations' sustainability, planning, equity, and research, or PROSPER. Next goal is develop a coordinated, data-informed strategic plan to expand access to peer and recovery support services. Sorry for the acronyms, just trying to fit things on the slide, delivered by peer and recovery organizations. Goal 3, address knowledge gaps and infrastructure barriers across and between the 3 groups, the peer and recovery organizations, the payers, and the stakeholders. Goal 4 is address policy gaps and barriers by empowering the voice of peer and recovery organizations and those with lived experience. And goal 5, affirmatively further health equity for marginalized communities. So those are a lot of goals, very diverse goals. And in a couple of slides, I'll show you how that's plotted across the 3 years that we have this grant, because we'll be leaning into some of the goals in some of the years and leaning into some of the other goals in the latter years. So just a little heads up for upcoming slides. But before we look at that, I wanted to show you what the the objectives are. So had a lot of goals, have even more objectives. These are the measurable objectives that we're going to be tracking to make sure that we're on track delivering this grant. 1 is annually establish or reestablish 50 network membership agreements with individuals or organizations representing the 3 groups: the providers, the payers, and the stakeholders. And at the end of this, I'll show you where you can, if you would like to become a formal member of the network, we'd love to have you. And there's an online form that you can fill out that I'll show you at the end of this presentation. 2 is annually establish and reestablish an advisory committee. And on that committee, we want at least 50% of the members of that advisory committee to identify as having lived experience in recovery. Recovery People is all about empowering those of us with lived experience. I think we're uniquely qualified to see some of the challenges and identify solutions that make a difference. And so we want very solid representation on that advisory committee. 3 is annually collect qualitative and quantitative research from at least 50 peer and recovery organizations, payers, and or stakeholders. I'd love to get more. I think in this case, more is better if we can, get different perspectives. 4, annually provide training and technical assistance. 5 is, it's not only that we want to provide training and technical assistance, but we want to do it in a way that is very meaningful to the participants. And so we commit to averaging 80% or higher in satisfaction and usefulness ratings from the participants in our training and technical assistance. 6 is annually lead at least 4 advocacy campaigns and initiatives. And I can hear Elizabeth's voice in my head going, don't worry, Jason, we're going to do way more than 4, but we've committed to at least 4. 7 is annually support 5 peer workforce instructors serving marginalized communities. Some of the marginalized communities that we've seen or identified as those in rural areas, those along the Texas-Mexico border, individuals from the deaf and hard of hearing community. There's a lot of communities and people that want to become peer specialists in those communities that are experiencing some barriers to actually become certified. And so we want to try to address that with this particular proposal. And finally, annually increase the number of payers by at least one that contract with PROs. So if the purpose of what we're doing is to help find, more revenue streams, more sustainable funding for peer and recovery organizations, we want to at least, and I hope it's more than that, bring in a new payer each year. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we have this grant for 3 years. And so we wanted to plot each goal across the 3 years so you could get a sense of what we'll be doing when. And goal 1, remember, this is weaving that network. This is, identifying and recruiting the different peer and recovery organizations, the payers, and the stakeholders. So the other thing to notice about this timeline is that when I say year 1, year 2, and year 3, I'm talking about grant years, not calendar years. So our grant years start essentially October 1, or here it's like September 9th, September 29th of 2023 was the start of year 1, and that grant year runs through September 29th of 2024. And then underneath that, you see Q1, Q2, that stands for quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. But it's of that grant year and not the calendar year. And I apologize if that gets confusing. It confuses me all the time, so you're not alone. So again, here this first year, the heaviest lift, our biggest focus is going to be recruiting people to the network and weaving that network. And when we say weaving the network, is keeping everybody informed. We'll do that through meetings like this, through newsletters, and making sure people are engaged through email, social media, etc. The second goal is developing a coordinated, data-informed strategic plan. And so we'll be surveying the members of the network from the peer and recovery organizations, the payers, and the stakeholders. We'll be conducting semi-structured interviews with some folks. We'll be collecting this quantitative and qualitative data. Our hope is at the end of grant year 1 and the beginning of grant year 2, we'll have enough information that we'll start to do some analysis. We'll bring, some of the findings to the advisory committee and eventually to the larger group and say, this is what we found. What does that mean to you? And we'll gain another round of input, and altogether it'll end up developing the strategic plan. The strategic plan will guide us about what policies we should, priorities we should be focused on, what training and technical assistance we should be developing, etc. And that sets us up for goal 3. This is where we develop those training and technical assistance tools and start making them available across much of year 1, definitely year 2, as well as year 3. Seems like I'm doing a lot of talking. So if anybody has any questions around this, please add it in the chat, or you can come off mute. Otherwise I'm going to keep chugging along here. So from goal 3, we move to goal 4. And this is the one that's focused on policy and advocacy. Address the policy gaps and barriers by empowering the voice of peer and recovery organizations and persons with lived experience. And if you look across the 3 years, you'll notice that right there in the middle, I've got 2 of those quarters. So quarter 2 and quarter 3 of grant year 2 are highlighted in yellow. And that's because that's when the Texas legislature is open. So some of y'all may or may not know that Texas is very unique in that our legislation is only open every odd number of year for about 2 quarters, from January to about mid-year. Is it 140 days or 160 days? 140, did I get the first one right, Elizabeth?
140.
140. So if we want to see any legislation around this activity, we have this window that we need to be thinking of. That doesn't mean that we wait until then to do anything. We have to start working ahead of time as we find, priorities, as we identify things through our research. We need to be talking to our respective legislators. But then we have that window if we think that any laws need to be changed. And then afterwards, supporting anything that did get passed. To be more specific, things that we committed to SAMHSA that we would focus on is collaborating with harm reduction advocates. I think, Recovery People has long been partnering with harm reduction. I think even more so now, thinking about the opiate epidemic, and we're continuing to see overdoses increase. We definitely need to collaborate with the harm reduction advocates and service providers, thinking about how can we look at that continuum of care, really thinking about persons with substance use issues are all at different places of stages of change, different recovery capital, different disease severity. And so one size doesn't fit all. How can we develop a continuum of services that really support individuals regardless of where they're at and what their particular goals are? Second is post-prosper advocacy meetings, and through those identify what are the policy priorities. We definitely want to meet with state leadership to let them know what our network is coming up with, and lean on the state to help us not only identify problems but identify solutions. And then finally, lead coalitions to elevate policy priorities. So we've got this network, but there are a lot of other coalitions out there that we should continue to engage with and coordinate with. And so that's what I meant by that. All right, goal 5, affirmatively further health equity for marginalized communities. We've got 2 planned activities in this area. First one you'll see is a health disparity statement. That's something that SAMHSA requires. We actually like to reframe that and call it a recovery equity statement. And so we want to develop some performance metrics, look at marginalized communities and make sure that we want to make sure that our work is serving and representing and inclusive of those marginalized communities. And so if we have metrics around that, if we have milestones, we can measure ourselves against those to see how we're doing. In the past, we found that we've done really well with some marginalized communities, and I think that's because we have a lot of community partners that represent those communities. And if we find that we're not representing or engaging a particular community, we need to go reach out into that community and say, how can we better serve you? What are your perspectives? And then I alluded to the second activity around this goal, and it's addressing those workforce development barriers in the marginalized communities, either through training, supervision, or overcoming some of the barriers that they're experiencing. Let's see. All right, so it looks like Elizabeth dropped in some stuff. Preparation for the legislative session starts a year ahead of time. That's spring of 2024. So, big project, lots of moving parts, requires a lot of staff or a big team. And what you'll notice about this slide, this staffing chart, is everybody in green, that is an employee. Everybody in the purple, the bluish purple, that is contractors. And then we also want to make sure that we have volunteers, on our advisory committee that's guiding all this work. So as I mentioned, I'm Jason Howell. I'm the executive director of Recovery People, but on this particular project, I'll serve as the project director. The person that's going to do the most heavy lifting on this project is a project coordinator, or we're nicknaming them the Network Weaver. We are actively interviewing people right now for that position. Fingers crossed that we'll be able to hire somebody, announce who they are by the end of this month. And then from there, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, Elizabeth Henry is going to be focusing on all those advocacy policies. I'm trying to remember, was that goal 4? That's the area that she'll be focusing in the most. When it comes to the equity coordinator, Lisa Carter, our administrative assistant, will be working with Christine Zimmerly, who waved at everybody at the top of the hour, really on that peer-to-career support. The evaluator is Stacy Stevens-Manzer. She is with TIMH. Stacy is an amazing researcher and evaluator, and TIMH has really worked a lot with peer and recovery organizations over the past couple of years. So it's a really natural fit to be working with TIMH on this. And then probably the heaviest lift when we go and engage with the different organizations in the network are the payers. I mean, these are the folks that, Kimberly, you quoted something right before. If you don't like the language of the payers, you're not going to get paid. I think I messed that quote up, but something around this. We need to understand their language. We need to understand, what is it that they need from us in order to interface with those payment mechanisms. And so, Kimberly Allen, kind of brag on her a little bit. She is not only a peer specialist, a woman in recovery, but she's worked with payers. She's worked in negotiating contracts. She is multilingual in that. And so we're very blessed to have her as a part of this group. And then we're likely going to be contracting with a PSS, which stands for Peer Specialist Supervisor. Let's see, Catherine asked, can you post the job requirements for this project coordinator and the PSS along with where to apply? Thank you for the interest. So Catherine, this job was posted on the Recovery People site. We typically leave it up for at least a month. The job posting was pulled on October 15th, and we started interviewing those who posted or who applied. And we are actually, finishing up round 1 interviews and moving to round 2. So unfortunately, we weren't able to consider your application for the coordinator position this time, but we definitely encourage you to get on the Recovery People newsletter and check out our website under the employment section, because we would love to receive an application from you in the future. And regarding the PSS, or the Peer Specialist Supervisor, we're looking for someone who is not only a PSS, but a LCDC or has another clinical credential. The way that the law currently reads in Texas, I said currently, is, and it's probably not the law, it's the TAC, is that a peer specialist doesn't have to have a clinical license, but then they would need to be supervised by a clinician. So rather than have that, we're looking for somebody that holds both the PSS and say like an LCDC or similar clinical qualification to provide that service. And I'm also hearing Elizabeth lives in my head a lot. I can hear her talk about one of the policy priorities is trying to change that for the future. As I mentioned, this was a very competitive grant. It was a competitive grant process. Only 3 awarded in the entire United States. We were able to receive 23 letters of commitment from various organizations. I definitely want to give props and a big thanks to all these organizations. If we had not had this much support behind our proposal frankly, we wouldn't have been able to win it and bring the funding down to Texas. So definitely appreciate all the support that we got. And Catherine's was head of the game. She's been asking really good questions about the definitions of the different types of groups that we're wanting to be part of the network. Just to summarize or review that, when we say peer and recovery organizations or PROs, these are organizations or programs that provide peer and recovery services to individuals or family members impacted by substance use and or mental health challenges. And historically, they've been led and governed by the community that they serve, meaning individuals with lived experience. So some examples of that are going to be recovery community organizations, recovery community centers, recovery housing, recovery high schools. All these examples kind of reflect the substance use side of the house, if you will. And that's because this funding is coming through CSAT. I find it interesting that our federal partners are always saying that mental health and substance use recovery need to integrate or play more, but then when you look at how they're structured, it's very siloed. So, but know that we want to be inclusive of consumer operated service providers, COSPs, and our other organizations that really have a cultural connection to the mental health side. I think that we'll be able to develop some solutions that really translate across both. And so it would be great to have their perspective and them being included as well. The other group that we want at the discussion table are the payers. These are organizations that fund, award, sub-award, contract, subcontract, scholarship, or pay for peer and recovery services. Examples, and these are just a small sample of examples: insurance companies, certified community behavioral health centers, clinical or medical providers that may be wanting to subcontract peer and recovery organizations, housing providers that subcontract peer and recovery organizations, local and state agencies, universities, foundations, and many, many more. The third group is the stakeholders, and these are organizations and individuals with a vested interest in supporting individuals and family members impacted by substance use or mental health challenges. This could be policymakers, advocacy organizations, researchers, other subject matter experts, or vendors. And then the last thing I'll say about this is you may approach this and say, you know what, I'm more than just one or the other. And that's perfect and great. As you fill out your application to be part of the network, just indicate which ones that you think that you represent, and we would love to have you. So that brings me to how can you become a part of the network. Here is a QR code that you can scan to an application. I can also, let me click this link that will take you to the Recovery People website, or not. Let me go back here. All right, let's see if I can copy that. Oh, I think Elizabeth's already dropped it in the chat. And so if you use the QR code, it would just bring you to this particular page. It covers the purpose of Prosper, and then an application that asks you for just your information, what perspective your organization or brings. Remember, you can choose more than one if you want. If you know people that we should be inviting to the network, there's a large area here that you can share ideas about who we should be inviting to be part of the network. And then some questions about nominating people to the advisory committee. So if you know anyone, or maybe it's yourself, that would be someone that would serve on the advisory committee, we welcome you to share that information. And then the last is just a commitment to support the purpose of Prosper. All right, I've been doing a lot of talking, and I definitely want to invite all of you all to ask questions or provide comment. So I welcome you to unmute if you'd like.
Hi, Jason. My name
Hello.
is my name is Tracy Moore. I've heard a lot about you too, but I've never met you. Thank you for all of the great work that you guys are doing. So, I'm a peer. I'm a mental health peer specialist, and I identify as a person with lived experience. Going through Via Hope, I was able Via Hope had this Peer Voice project, and I
Mhm.
was able to be a part of that. And my project was to start my own organization, which is Anchoring Hope's Wellness Recovery Institute here in Houston. We do business as Anchoring Hopes.
Mhm.
So one of the things we've been able to accomplish is we've been able to be awarded a contract with Harris County Juvenile Probation Department to start a community engagement program. And we said that we were using peers as credible messengers.
Mhm.
And so I'm excited about that. It's a pretty decent contract. And so what I'm running into and what I'm finding is that I work with a lot of peers and they need training. Like they have lived experience and they've been volunteering, but they don't have the documentation as a mental health peer specialist. Uh, but we'll have funding to be able to pay for, our people to get trained and stuff like that. So we're excited about that. And then one of the things I'm also finding is that they are like it's like a new specialty has come out of it. So it's like forensic peer specialists
Mhm. Mhm.
focusing on juveniles that's on probation, if that makes sense
Yes.
um, to you. So I'm looking forward to being a part of the network so I can share the data that we're collecting, um, so you guys can use that for advocacy, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. First of all, big props on getting that contract. That's a huge win. Not everybody, can navigate that. So definitely want to acknowledge you for that. And two, would love for you to be part of the network and share just what you did and more. I think understanding what the needs that you as an emerging organization have. You've already identified that you need, training. Just hearing more about that so that we can develop tools for emerging organizations like yours. And I would definitely invite you to encourage, the city of Houston or, whatever agency gave you the contract, welcome them to the network because we want to hear what they're looking for, what they saw in you, and what are the different training and technical assistance that they may need.
Okay, so yeah, it's Harris County Juvenile Probation Department. And I mean, this is like we're a new organization and they took that chance on us. People don't realize Harris County is according to the 2020 US Census, Harris County is the third largest county in the whole United States. So we have an opportunity to make a great impact, if we navigate it appropriately. And we're also looking at another contract with the Houston Galveston Council to use peers as
Mhm.
credible messengers to do another program for another community engagement program for daycare providers. They want people to come in and work with families who are educating, their who are educating children at home, and they want you to come in and do professional development, and they want you to do mental health professional development as well. So we're going to find a way to combine that and hopefully be able to leverage the contract we have with Harris County to be
Mhm.
able to get that contract as well, to be able to bring more peers into the workforce. And what we're doing too, Jason, let me add right quick, I don't want to take up all your time, but we're making sure we're paying peers livable wages and giving insurance. And I'm even we're even buying vehicles because one of the things when peers come in, they don't have a lot of resources because a lot of them are starting over. When I came into the peer workforce, I had to start out over. I had nothing. So we're trying to address those barriers as well.
What I'm noticing, Tracy, is the language you're using, the concept. You bring some business savvy to this. You're talking about leveraging one to go to the next. So I'm just noticing the skill set that you bring to this. And I think that's some of the things that we'll be identifying with this project is how do we develop the business acumen, the leadership skills. It's one thing the skill set that you need to do direct services is one type of skill set. There's a whole nother skill set for, opening up, an organization, negotiating contracts. And so I definitely hear, I look forward to meeting you more and hearing about your background and how you got those skills.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Let's see, there's a bunch of stuff in the chat. Let's see if I can scroll down or up here and catch it. DeAndre Gardner says, no questions at this moment, but very excited and grateful to be part of this community and moment in space. Super excited about the policy things as well. It makes me hopeful to think about the future of this field. Amen to that. Really eager to be a helper on this level as well, whatever capacity that might be. Thank you so much. Let's see here if I can navigate my Zoom. So I think there's just some communication between other folks. Yes. Well, we've got about 15 minutes to the top of the hour. Any other questions or comments that people would like to share?
Jason,
Kimberly, you raise your hand.
yeah, I wanted to just, sorry, I'm at the boxing gym. The reason I partner with the payer community is I box. That just means that I enjoy sparring. I like bringing ideas forward, particularly when people don't agree. Elizabeth Henry, that in policy it's so important to be able to spar and maintain and do your job. So hats off to you. If you don't know Jason Howell, I'm a global mental health advocate. I would not be where I am today without Jason Howell picking me up on some research about 4 or 5 years ago. It changed the trajectory of my career. So what I mean in your life through Recovery People is, yes, I talk to the payers. When I listen to someone like Tracy Moore, hats off, Tracy, on that award right there. That just means that I'll be visiting Harris County because, the payers have an interest in Harris County. Anywhere there's crime, anywhere there's loss, anywhere there's any kind of pain, the payers are going to look at that, aren't they? So what's really cool for me about this project is, thanks, Jason. He invites the payers into the conversation. That really excites me a lot when people talk to me in the state of Texas and throughout the globe. I work around the globe. What Jason was saying is, it's a matter of language. It's a matter of respect. Just like boxing, you don't walk in and break somebody's nose and then ask them to box, or you don't come in and flex, without knowing respect, fundamental respect. So what's cool is when I hear something like Tracy, I can broker that conversation. I can introduce a special service that the payers look for. They're looking for you. So you can know that in your heart right now. I'm super excited because the more unique and special you are, and I know you are, if you're in recovery, you're special now. And I thought we'll, make those introductions and learn about you, through data. It's so interesting to me. Quantifiable data is something that we measure. But qualifiable data is something that you say and everything else. So I'm looking forward to talking about you. The more we know about you, the more we're going to talk about you. And the more we talk about you, the more the payers sit up and say, hey, where are they? So Jason, once again, you always do such unique projects. And to everybody, the more data and information, the better. I'm grateful to be involved.
Well, I think y'all can all see why we invited Kimberly Allen to work on this project. Yeah, she brings a lot of knowledge and energy and connections. So thank you. All right, we've got about 13 minutes to the top of the hour. Any other questions or thoughts? Things that people would like to share? Well, hearing none, we may have come to a natural close of today's meeting. I really appreciate all your interest and folks being on the line. We welcome you to join this particular network and be on this journey with us for the next 3 years and hopefully beyond that. Please help us identify other peer and recovery organizations, other payers, and other stakeholders that we can, invite to this table, because the more information, the more perspectives we have, just the more solid the solutions that we can come up with. We will be sharing this recording with all those that were registered and put this on our website. If you have, I think I got one more slide just to leave you with. If you have any questions, know that you can always reach out to us at info@recoverypeople.org. I think that's to make it simple, that we from there, kind of depending on whether your question has to do with advocacy or the network or something, we can route it to the appropriate staff. But I hope that y'all enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, everyone.
You.